institutions invest in physical space that they want people to be in, right? And so the pandemic quickly shifted the way that we had to operate, but it was so uncomfortable for people paying hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars on physical space that no one was using. It's hard. That's hard. From a planning standpoint, it's hard. But then there's this other element. Good thing I'm an epidemiologist. That might help some. But I think there's this other element that people were also scared of engagement, right? And they wanted a work environment that was conducive, that made them feel safe and secure. We should do that, right? I've always had a policy. I want people to be happy coming to work, and I want them to be happy when they leave.
This is the Leadership Foundry Podcast. I'm going to be the host this week. I'm Brandon Smith. Our show today is an exceptional show for leaders that are looking to do two things. First, how do we drive greater culture change? Second, how do we become greater influencers? This is a masterclass on both. So to guide us today, my guest is Dr. Robert Nobles. Robert, he serves as the Vice President for Research Administration at Emory University. Nationally, he serves as the Vice Chairperson on the Board of Directors for Public Responsibility for Medicine and Research, the Executive Committee for the Federal Demonstration Partnership, and a member of the National Science Foundation's Advisory Committee for Business and Operations. I loved my conversation with Robert. It really gave us a master class on how we lead and promote change and a connection and alignment in complex organizations. Universities are very complex, require a lot of influencing, as a lot of matrix organizations are. So I want you to pay real close attention to some of the practical things that Robert guides us on how we can go into situations where there might be resistance. We can break down those resistors and get everyone on the same page. And what organization doesn't need that today? So listen real close to my conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it as much as I did.
Welding together practical insights and powerful conversations to forge world-class leaders. This is the Leadership Foundry Podcast. Now, here's this week's host, Brandon Smith, co-founder of the Leadership Foundry.
Robert, my friend, I can't tell you how excited I am to have you on the Leadership Foundry Podcast. I'm thrilled for our conversation today. Just in my time getting to know you, you have accomplished so much and you've led in such an effective way in challenging circumstances with the pandemic. So I think our conversation today about leading today and complexity is going to be really, really exciting. But before we do that, for viewers and listeners, would love to hear you share a little bit about your journey. What's been your professional journey that ultimately got you in the seat you sit in today?
No, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. And thank you for having me on this podcast. I'm quite a fan. So you should know that. But so my journey really started with being inquisitive very early. When I was in high school in Denver, I got this opportunity to learn about research and had an internship with the University of Colorado while I was in my junior year of high school, which was my first introduction of research.
Wow.
And at that time, I wanted to be a physician, right? So I said, hey, I want to be a community health physician, treat patients, et cetera. And that opened up my eyes to being able to make broader impacts. So that marched me down my path of wanting to explore this world of research, this world of public health. That took me to study molecular biology, epidemiology, joining the Centers for Disease Control, and actually implementing my dream of doing field epidemiology, of tracking diseases, running studies, and trying to help individuals. Then that took me to the University of Texas, where I did a number of things besides just get my doctorate. It was my opportunity to get recruited into the university to start helping with research enterprises. And And I had such great mentorship and people that believed in me early to help me realize dreams that I didn't even know were possible for myself. So kudos to Dr. Peter Davies for seeing something in me that I didn't even know I had quite yet. So that my journey really started there, which led me to leading the University of Texas, Texas A&M University, University of Tennessee, and now I serve in the vice president role here at Emory University, which is I'm humbled and honored to be of service to campus and our research community.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, we could probably spend the entire show just digging into your backstory. So, but I will, before we start to talk about today and some of the challenges that leaders face today and some of the unique challenges in large organizations like universities, what's been the biggest leadership aha moment for you in your career? Was there a certain realization you had about what makes effective leaders? And maybe it's unique to university settings, but I'm just curious if there was a particular aha moment or a idea that you've learned that you said, gosh, that is how I need to be leading if I want to be effective.
Yeah, there was one moment in my career very early on in the 90s when I had the opportunity to lead. I was giving a statewide program for the state of Florida, really monitoring beaches, right? I started a beach water monitoring quality program and communication program for the state that's still implemented today. Wow. Of telling people when the beaches are safe from bacterial and viral illnesses that float in the water. And I had this retired Marine, his name was Jack Pittman, that he was a retired Marine and an engineer that reported to me because I wrote the program.
Okay.
I was young in my career in leadership. And in truth, all of my experiences related to leadership is what I saw on TV. And if you could think back to the 90s of what leadership looked like, it was command and control. It was come in, be efficient, deliver your commander's intent, get feedback, march along your way, 10, 15 minutes, you're in and out. And so I was practicing that because that was my model for leadership.
Yeah.
And I did that for a month with this retired Marine, and he stopped me one day. And he said, "Robert, can I talk to you?" And I'm like flying by because I'm my head down, needing to accomplish some task. And I said, "No, absolutely, Jack. What do you need?" He was like, I want you to come to my office." And I'm like, "Jack, we're right here. We could talk right here. What do you need?" "No, I want you to slow down long enough to come to my office and sit down with me." And I said, "Why?" He said, "I've noticed over the last month or two that I've been reporting to you, you never ask about me." And and my dad's a Marine. So that was coming from a different place. So I was taken aback. And I said, "Well, what do you want me to ask? What do you want me to ask about you? You don't ask me how I'm doing. You don't ask me about my family. You don't know anything about me except for that I work for you." And I said, "What else do I need to know?" It wasn't in TV. I'm thinking of all the shows. I'm like, that never came out in the shows. And it was so impactful. He said, "I think before we meet, at the beginning of our meeting, we should spend time asking questions about ourselves. You should ask me about me, my day, my week, my background, my family. I'll ask you some questions." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not going to talk about family at work. Like this, that's so personal. This is work. Work is work." On TV, they keep work, and home life. And I said, "Why, Jack? I said, "I'm willing to do it. But I need to understand why." And the principle was so, I think, profound. He said, "Robert, the way that we're working and establishing a relationship is good when everything is going really well, right? We do our work, we get it done, we celebrate the accomplishments." He said, "But when there is adversity and things aren't getting done, we will blame each other And what I want us to do is understand each other so that we can work through the adversity together, and it won't be someone's fault. So get to know me, I'll get to know you, we'll be a team, and we'll accomplish things together, not me accomplishing things for you. And as my leader, this is what I need from you so I can be effective at my work. And I'm like, well, then maybe I should start drinking coffee and asking people how they're doing. And I did. Now I drink coffee all the time. So it was something like that stopped me in my tracks. And I said, leadership is so much more than getting the job done. It's the actual connection that we make with individuals from a team approach. And Jack taught me that. And I never thought it would come from a retired Marine where they're in a command and control structure. I just never thought it, but I listened, and that's what I've done my entire career. I've listened to the individuals that I work with so I can change who I am to help them achieve their goals.
That is a mic drop story, my friend. That is fantastic. Awesome. I love that. I think a lesson we can all take away, and really, really important because it's a little more clunky and harder to do it when we're working virtually. And now we're going to have to figure out how we work that in a more hybrid way. Eventually, I'm going to ask you about that, but let's talk about something else that I know you've experienced that is a challenge for all leaders when they move into a new environment. Whenever a leader takes over a new organization or group, it's natural. There's going to be culture change. And culture change takes time. It's not like, you pour it in the water, spin a spoon around for 5 seconds, and you've got change. It takes some time. So given your time at Emory, I'm sure the culture there has changed as you've led that research organization. How do you approach culture change? What's your strategy for thinking about culture change and then helping people make that change as comfortable as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's an important question because it's something I've thought a lot about in my research of why university presidents last or they don't last. And the answer comes down to culture. When there's new leadership and a concept of new leadership, even VP level, associate VP level, president level, one has to ask their question. One, do you understand the culture for which that you're going to? The answer is always no, unless you're part of it, right? So when you're from the outside coming in, understanding culture matters. When people recruit individuals from the outside, clearly they want something different than what they can't get from the inside. So people are asking you for culture change, but they're not asking you to be a bull in the china shop. Right? Because there's remarkable pride of our institutions and our institutional cultures. So what they're asking us to do is walk a journey of change, but bring everyone with you. So a leader needs to come in and one, assess the culture and not automatically coming in with the thought, I'm going to change this culture. You also don't want to be complacent in the culture. Right? Because culture changes with your presence. And so you have to be very thoughtful, very mindful about the way that you're going to lead, the way that you're going to engage, the way that you listen to individuals and appreciate their perspective, and create a sense of connection before you start altering the way they do business. And so coming into Emory, I'll just say from a large construct, what I noticed even during the interview process is that we had so many bells and whistles, and we have grown so much, so fast that we are very vertical in the way that we carry out our business. I could see it from the outside. And so what the first cultural change that I needed to think about and begin progressing down the path of is how do I break down the silos of individual units across the university, not just my office, and I had silos within my office that wouldn't speak to other components of the office and share information or techniques of success. Yeah. So I had micro silos and macro silos, and it was really about how do we extend a hand of transparency and build a culture of trust, information sharing and listening and evolving as an institution, because ultimately everybody really wants the same thing. People want to be successful. People don't want you to take over their sets of responsibilities. People want barriers removed so that they can march forward in a very positive way. And if my role is to bring people together, share information, disarm, even the difficult conversations to move us forward, that's part of the shift of culture change. Because then there's a sense of credibility that is created along the way that then people rely on you and they confide in you, right? When do you know you've made it? I would say when partners that on items that one would think you would be antagonistic about call you and give you a heads up and want to try to work it out even before it goes to a broader audience. So then there's these undercurrents of these conversations of people wanting to help you and help them be more successful. And when we disarm each other in that way, the way that I described with Jack, how he engaged with me, culture change starts with connection. And that's the process to get the work done. Because none of this work can be done in isolation. In truth, everything is connected to everything else at this institution. Yep. And sharing that message slowly, surely, is something that one has to continue to work at. What's some benefits of it? When you have a stable environment where all the employees who were there before you are still there, right? Then you need to show a lot more appreciation for the culture, because then they would immediately begin to think, if you're coming in talking about change, that everything that they've been doing is not right. And you'll lose a leader that doesn't have individuals in a team, or people following, is not a leader. You don't want to lose your internal group while you're trying to build broader groups. You don't want to do that. And so you have to appreciate and learn more about it. And that's one of the things that I try to be conscious about and continue need to work on, is how do I garner successes from the team where they are so humble and don't even know that they're successes that could be shared across the university to bring people closer. So it comes down to really this point related to transparency, connections, communicating, and telling people what you're thinking and how you're going to get there, and allow everyone to be socialized along the journey with you.
So what I love about your answer is you built on that story, the first story you gave us about connection and the importance of connection, and then you turned that into a process. It's like coming into a place that's got a long history and legacy and pride, like a university, but other places might experience something like that. You got to start off by building connection and appreciating what's there. It reminded me, because I haven't thought about this in years, but there's a piece of there's a protocol or process. It's called appreciative inquiry. It came out of Case Western, and it studies basically how do you do positive culture change. And they say you start off with appreciative inquiry. What's working well around here? You kind of honor those things rather than just talking about all the things that need to change. Really important for those people that are kind of legacy folks who've been around a while. You just kind of do that really, really well. I loved your kind of comment around culture change starts with connection, and then adding a little bit of transparency. And it sounds like, you've really kind of led that way. And I know we've seen so many positive results of your kind of efforts inside Emory. So this comes really natural for you, at least it does at this point in your career and life. You've probably built those muscles over time. For people that maybe this doesn't come as natural for, this may be a hard question, Robert. So here it comes. Are you ready? This might be a curveball, but I think you can hit it.
It's fine.
How long should one as a leader expect to take doing this process of appreciating, connection, transparency until you're likely to start seeing results?
Yeah. No, that's fair. I'm going to answer the question, but I'm going to give a little hint of how it became natural for me. Father being in the military, we moved a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm the middle son of two other brothers on each side of me and an older sister. So I'm always the negotiator in the middle, and I've been thrown into multiple new settings. And when I described the history of me growing into research administration and research leadership, I named multiple institutions. So it does provoke anxiety each and every time that there has to be a transition, but there's a process. What does it take? How long does it take is your question for me. It depends on how widespread the cultural change needs to be. Okay. So if you're talking about your internal team, I would say that they need to make sure you're not going to leave. So it takes a year of messaging, a year of implementation, and a year of reflection. Okay. Like you have to start with listening. Then they have to see practice. And then you have to evaluate and show them the outcome of the year and a half or 2 years of work and how it's producing positive outcomes. The other thing you need to do along the way, if you need to speed it up, is every incremental success needs to be celebrated and celebrated beyond just your team. Show them how they're connected with a broader enterprise and share that success with the broader enterprise. Now, if it's more widespread, I have this story. It reminds me of this time that I was trying to activate culture change in middle of Texas. And it was something simple, right? We should not discharge firearms on campus. Something simple, right? In Texas.
Is that something simple in Texas? I don't know. I haven't lived in Texas.
I thought it was simple.
Okay.
And so our campuses, there had a land grant mission. So it was also, we had cattle and horses and we had herds of animals. And I was over the animal welfare program. And the policy of the institution was that one would have to register their firearms, and two, they should not discharge their firearms on campus property. It was really funny and fun that one of the individuals who was a field director in a 10-gallon hat and cowboy boots, and I did buy cowboy boots, so I tried to fit it, but I couldn't put on the hat. I fit the mold wherever I am. Like I assimilate really quickly. And he said, he said, we don't need to register our firearms. We have many of them. And no one can tell me when and where I shoot my guns. And if I need to put down a heifer in the field, and I had to go look all this stuff up, you can't tell me I can't. And I've been doing this 40 years. And so some city slicker coming in isn't going to tell me I need to change the way that I do my business. And this was like it wasn't just me and him talking, right? So this was at a meeting, and there had to have been 40, 50 folks there. And I'm explaining how we need to apply university policy across the board. And I don't remember the guy's name, but I thanked him for the history and the culture. And I said, Mr. or Dr., whatever your name is, I said, look, I don't want to be the person to tell you that the way you've been carrying out business for the past 40 years is wrong. I don't want to be that person. So I'm not going to be that person. What I'm going to tell you is that over time, rules change. And shame on us for not getting them to you fast enough. But the responsibility right now, simple. Have as many guns as you want. Like that's a good thing. And there are special reasons why you might need it on campus property. Fine. We're happy to create an exception process, but the rule is the rule. And I know you love this university 40 years times the amount I love it being here a year or two. I know it. But I want you to continue to love the university and not be at odds with the university. And I want to help you do that. This isn't about me, right? So I take myself out of it. This isn't me against you and I'm going to control your guns. I don't want to do that. Like that's not my thing. But there is a university related policy. There's a rule related to doing it from the state and the federal government. And when we have federal dollars, I don't want you to lose any of that. So I'm here to help. And so it could have been a really antagonistic conversation, right? If I brought ego into the discussion, but that is not my tact. I don't need to prove to someone my position can win. I don't need to exert authority to convince you that it makes sense. I start at the human level when I converse with individuals. You're a person first, right? I'm Robert way before I was Dr. Nobles. And so I need to understand where you're coming from and what is at the core of your discontent with anything that I'm saying. And then I tackle that. And honestly, Brandon, if it doesn't make sense to me, I tell people, look, I agree with you. Like maybe you should always shoot the heifer in the field if that's your thing, right? Because there's good reason for it, because you don't want them to be in pain. And there's documentation that we can create to help you do that. And then have an after action report. And so he kind of tilted his hat and said, thank you. And then we moved on with other discussions. But it's something that reminds me that when we talk about culture, you need to find the individuals that, and every institution has them, that has things that they take remarkable pride in. Find out who created the current state of affairs and talk to them, because they're going to feel as if you're stepping over things that they've created, that they believe in, a fabric of who they are. And I think as leaders, we always need to project that is never our intention. And never be afraid to apologize if that accidentally occurred. Never. Like I'm so sorry. That was not where I was coming from. And don't use titles to as a validation of your ability to tell people what to do. You gotta treat people like people first.
Yeah. That story is a masterclass in influencing. So let me tell you what I heard in it that I thought was so beautiful. Rather than oppositional, rather than kind of going at him, you came alongside him. So I love to use the example of Aikido. I can't remember, Robert, if you and I have talked about Aikido before. I've talked about it before on some of my podcasts. So Aikido is a martial arts form, and the whole premise behind Aikido is you never attack your opponent. You redirect their energy, which is exactly what you did there. He had this strong passion, and I want to have as many guns as I want. I'm going to shoot them wherever I want to. And you said, amen, brother, I understand. And you've got this love for the university, and you've got 40 times more than me. And I would hate for you to be at odds with the university. Let's take that passion and energy, and let's channel that in a way that is a win for you and a win for the university. And I want to come in there and solve for that. You came alongside him and redirected that energy. So he felt like you were next to him rather than across from him. And I think we could take that example in culture change. We could take that example in influencing. And for those who are listening that are in complex organizations where alignment or working through a matrix is critical to success, universities are very complex, governments are complex. Any organization over $3 billion in revenue is going to be complex. And if you're in a matrix, Robert just told you how to manage it. So I love that story, Robert. Well, we've got time for one last question. So
wait. So Brandon.
Yeah.
So the real answer, depending on the complexity of the institution, It's going to take you 2 to 3 years.
Oh, okay. Well, I
Okay,
forgot about. I was so excited about your story. I forgot my question.
Yeah, I want to answer. It will take you. It should not take you longer than 3 years to reset the culture. But if your life cycle is faster than that in your institution, it will be faster.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So last area for our discussion. I know one of the things that's been top of mind for you recently, that's top of mind for a lot of leaders, is this balance of bringing folks back in the office, allowing them flexibility to work remotely, hybrid. How in kind of, you're thinking about a couple good strategies that you've been using and thinking through at Emory. How have you approached that challenge with your folks? What are some of the policies you've put in place or options you've provided folks to help them still stay connected, but also meet some of their outside personal needs that have kind of emerged over the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because now we're talking about this social construct related to engagement and where do we do our work, and with an understanding that institutions invest in physical space that they want people to be in, right? And so the pandemic quickly shifted the way that we had to operate, but it was so uncomfortable for people paying hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars on physical space that no one was using. It's hard. That's hard. From a planning standpoint, it's hard. But then there's this other element. Good thing I'm an epidemiologist. That might help some. But I think there's this other element that people were also scared of engagement, right? And they wanted a work environment that was conducive, that made them feel safe and secure. We should do that, right? I've always had a policy. I want people to be happy coming to work, and I want them to be happy when they leave. I really want that. I know it sounds so Disney-ish, but I really want people to come in happy, do great work, go home, decompress, love their families, and then be recharged for the next day. I just really want that because I think we get the best outcomes as a result. So when I think about what we had to go through, our institutions, the national institutions had a deep culture of being physically available, going into workspaces and offices to carry out the work. And the question that they asked was, if people are not here, how do we know they're working? My answer to that has always been, when I'm in my office working, I don't even know who's here. Even if they say they're here, I don't know. I'm not walking by everyone's office. Are you working right now? Are you working? What you doing? That's not my thing. I don't have time to do that. No one has time to do that. This is not the industry where you need to micromanage team members who you're trying to promote innovation and problem solving. You need to let them work. And so we issued a bunch of surveys, engagement surveys related to preferences. And we heard from people, they wanted to stay virtual. And it was hard to let people take office equipment home, right? Set up a workspace at home. This is what I told people. And it was maybe it was a bit provocative for where we were culturally. I said, look, anything in your work office that you need at home that doesn't require you to hire movers to come move to your home environment, you could take it with you, right?
Yeah.
You can take your chair. I don't care. You could take whatever it is in your office to help you be effective. What I learned over time is this. And it's hard to say from a human capital approach, but I'll say it because it's the truth. When people don't have to commute and they have their own home environment, they actually produce a lot more work for institutions. The thing that scared me the most, which is the opposite of the question, is if I had everybody come back, how much productivity am I going to lose? Not what we thought initially. Right. And so what I have found and what I explain to individuals is that really in-person work, in person, unless you have a frontline face of engaging with folks. In-person work for the sake of in-person work is truly inefficient. It's inefficient. But there are times when it's necessary. The byproduct of us being efficient at home is that we also become disconnected from the community that makes your unit or the institution what it is, right? And so now you need to be intentional about offering, inviting, framing when and how people come back. And oftentimes team members will ask me, well, am I going to make that event or that activity mandatory? I said, no, I want people to want to come. If I'm throwing a celebration, I want them to want to come. But the truth is that if we start using the old way of management, right, from in the textbooks from the 60s and 70s, where the philosophy is that individuals are widgets and they're disposable, right? That's a certain management style. If we go back to thinking like that, where we have to exert leadership to tell people what to do, we're losing as a leader. People should want to. So what I've done is tell people that they should use professional autonomy, right? Professional autonomy related to when you come into the office. There will be things that we think it would be most advantageous to be in person: strategic planning, certain training events, recruiting new people, and you want to get to know them, and it's hard to do that online, right? Fun networking or engagement events, celebrations. It's hard to do. Let's celebrate Brandon's birthday with wine and cheese at home and have a virtual happy hour. When we had to, it makes sense. It's much more impactful when we're together. And so what I put out is a framework of, there will be a couple times a year that I want to bring everybody together. I want to bring everybody together. That's not, I'm making everybody come together. It's different. And there will be a couple times a year I do that. There will be management meetings that there's a strong preference for people to be together, right? But we've always had people call in when they were not able to be in the office, and then we travel. Still have some flex. We always had that. So I don't know why that's much different. And so there will be certain management meetings that I think once a month. If you're available, please come in. If you're not, we'll allow you to tap in. If you're on vacation, stay on vacation. And then I said, for the unit heads, create what makes sense for you and your team. I don't want to script out how often you and your team members should be present. I know when you have somebody new and if they're struggling, it's really hard to onboard people online. But if you're effective at it, I'm not going to tell you got to come in and sit next to somebody. If they need help, figure out your strategies, right? This editor-author piece that you talk so much about, Brandon, matters. Your team members should come up with their own strategy and let you know, and then they should always be assessing if it's effective, because there's not a one-size-fits-all when we're leading dynamic people doing dynamic work. You can't come up with one rule that fits everyone. You're going to lose people. And when you start losing people as a leader, your effectiveness as a leader shrinks.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Robert. This has been great. We could keep going. We really could. There's so many things we could talk about. I'm going to go ahead and put out there, I'm going to have you back on the show because there's a lot more we can cover. But I always ask all my guests on the Leadership Foundry podcast this one final question. So in kind of a one-liner, what is one thing that you think leaders could start doing today, one practical thing that can make them better leaders today and better leaders tomorrow? What's that one-liner of that one thing they could start doing?
All right, so I'll give you a short answer and then a little bit longer answer. Well, I'll do the longer answer first, and then I'll do short answer. One of the things that I do when I have performance review annual reviews, we come into the room and I know it's a high anxious moment for people that would report into someone. And they come and they're waiting to see how you're going to judge them, right? They're waiting. They want the judgment so they can figure out what their mood is going to be. And I always found that to be quite awkward. So the first thing that I do, and I tell them, the new ones, they just experience it. I don't like script it. I say, look, I know that you're waiting to figure out what I think that you've done over the last year and how well you've been able to do in my perception. I said, but what's most important in this conversation is you start first and tell me how I can better support you as a leader. Like, what can I do? Give me constructive feedback on how I could better serve you in my capacity so you could be effective. And I let them go first. And I let them assess the institution, me, our organization, and put them in the power seat of the empowerment zone because they're in the role. Like, we can never pay people as much as they're really worth. And I recognize that. So I say, look, you're here, but you could be anywhere. And I appreciate you. So what can we do better to build an environment around you? And so the one thing that I think that leaders can do is not wait until performance review time. Ask the people that report up to you how you can serve them better, and listen and act on it. Because that level of empowerment to your, I don't even call people staff, to your team members is what's going to elevate the organization from where it is to where it can ultimately be. You have to ask the question, and you have to believe in the people that were hired to perform these activities. Ask the question, and you'll be surprised what you hear.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer. Beautiful and great example. Well, Robert, this has been an absolute joy. So if people listening to this say, gosh, I want to learn more about Robert and what he's up to, where can people go to just either connect with you or just, ping you if they've got a question? Is there any place you might want to send folks?
Yeah,
they may say, gosh, I would love to have Robert come speak to my association about kind of some of the things he's learned at leading in complex universities.
Yeah, and I've done that to even some private firms and military contractors that find me, and I'm like, I don't know how you found me, because I don't have a YouTube page, and I don't put myself out there. Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. Robert Noble's on LinkedIn. I'm there, but people email me, and it's robert.e.nobles@emory.edu. They email me. I'm on Facebook, but I'm not there that often. My wife she checks it every day. I don't check anything. So I don't do the social thing. So because I'm so busy focused on my team and people that find me that need my assistance so that they can be a better version of themselves to their organizations. But I would say the best way for a broad audience is LinkedIn. Yep. Or send me an email, and I'd be more than happy to assist if there's an opportunity.
Well, I can tell you right now, you've helped a bunch of people listening to this today. And you continue to help a bunch of us by all the good work you're doing at Emory, leading such a critical function, not only for Emory and the university, but for the broader world, as all that great research is coming to fruition. Your team and your organization is really helping to make that come true, and you being you is really helping to keep that hand steady on the ship. So thank you, my friend, for coming on the show today. Thank you for all the gifts that you bring, and I look forward to the potential of having you on a future show.
If I ever get invited back, I would be as humbled as I was the first time the invitation came across my desk. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share in this conversation with the many people in the lives that you touch each and every day, Brandon.
I absolutely loved that conversation with Robert. I took a whole host of notes, and he gave us some great tips and great stories on how to effectively lead in complex organizations, promote culture change, and even connection. And so let's talk about culture change. First, he tells us he did a lot of research around why university presidents fail. We could probably extend that to most leaders in large organizations. And he said they weren't successful in promoting culture change. And he had a great saying. He said, culture change starts with connection. He told that story he learned early on in his career about building connection with people and asking questions. And so he said he really learned to do that well, learned to go through and ask those questions, learn about people and learn about their backgrounds, and really come alongside them. I love that as kind of an image, coming alongside them rather than opposing them and reminding them on all the good they're trying to do for the organization and how he's trying to help them do that. I think that's fantastic. I did ask Robert, how long can we expect as leaders to create culture change? How long is this going to take? In that setting, in the university setting, if it's deeply entrenched, he said 2 to 3 years. And he broke it down to 1 year of messaging, 1 year of implementation, 1 year of reflection. Given the size of your organization, we might tone that down a little bit, but I think the 3 parts are the same: messaging, implementation, and reflection. And then we talked a little about how do we manage and lead hybrid teams? How's he approaching that? And I love the idea. He said, we're leading dynamic people in a dynamic environment. So there's no one size fits all. So you have to think about professional autonomy, giving people kind of the autonomy to make choices that are best for them. And then to sum it all up, I thought this was a really profound statement. He said, the thing he's worrying about right now is if I had everyone come back, made everyone come back into the office, how much productivity am I going to lose? Isn't that so ironic? We would never have thought that going into the pandemic. So I just loved my conversation with Robert. There's so much more than just those little highlights that I shared. I hope you took away some conversations so you can put them into your toolkit to make you not only a better leader today, but a better leader tomorrow.